When I get into a project, I really get into a project. It becomes one of the primary things I do when I'm awake, and even when I'm not doing it, it's on my mind. How to improve it, how to make things better, what the ramifications of finishing it are. And to that end, I could make a huge amount of episodes about all the different processes involved in scanning these computer shopper magazines. But I don't think that would be very fair. For the people who possibly care about it, even they would probably hit their limit after a while. And for the people who are tolerating this being on my mind, it would just be too much. So let's do one last episode, one last exploration about the ramifications, the process, the pain, the highs, the lows of this ongoing, never-ending project to scan every computer shopper. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It, a podcast about technology, history, and getting myself out of debt. Thanks to Jeff Atwood, Daniel Boyd, and the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who have been supporting me and helping me get out of debt. At the time that I've recorded this episode, I have digitized 6 issues of Computer Shopper, which isn't very impressive sounding until you realize that that is 3,306 pages of Computer Shopper. Pages that are flimsy, hard to keep track of, easily misaligned, easily prone to excess glue, tears, and all the other things that can go wrong when you're using a sheet-fed scanner to get your job done. So let's get things out of the way. The actual process of scanning one page of Computer Shopper, one newspaper print flimsy page, is still very exciting to me. You look at this page full of all sorts of details with its very small text and endless amounts of historical information about prices and specifications. You put it at the top of this Fujitsu scanner, this wide mouth scanner that I'm lucky enough to have, and you watch it process it in about 3 or 4 seconds. 3 or 4 seconds that brings it together at 600 DPI. A perfect, beautiful scan. And just for this moment, let's assume that it's a completely straight scan, that it went into the feeder exactly aligned, ran all the way through, didn't get hitched up. Well, when I look at the screen, I see a simulation of that scanned page, one where it's fed all of the paper over a 1 millimeter window, and from that has created a digital image with the sense of permanence, an innate sense of permanence that I could transfer it, modify it, do all sorts of zooming in and fixing things up, and then transfer it to anybody who wanted it and highlight a strange phrase or a forgotten piece of technology, functioning, if you will, as a perfect spell, a snapshot of a time that's past. When it all works, it works well. And the amount of times that it works well, that gets me through all the times that it doesn't. And it doesn't quite a bit. If I had to make a list of the biggest problems scanning Computer Shopper, I would have to say it's the glue. The amount of glue that they used for the perfect binding, which I then heat up with a heat gun and pull apart, the possibility of a small dot, a dot smaller than the period at the end of a sentence, ending up on the edge in such a way that it drags across the hot glass of the scanner, melts just enough to become sticky, and the entire thing becomes a wrenching, crunching sound as the entire fulcrum of this page bunches up like a car accident. Well, it's not something I enjoy. The only thing worse than it happening is it happening twice in a row. The emotional weight of feeling something that is one of a kind, even if actually it isn't, being destroyed or hurt badly in front of me, is a lot. I'll say, though, even a bunched up, broken piece of paper going once again through this very small window can give the illusion, and more importantly, the final product, as if nothing went wrong. I have yet, even through dozens of pages getting crumpled up inside of this machine, to lose the information on a page. I flip it around, I move it in a different direction, I bring it back down again, I pull it once again through the machine, and it actually looks pretty good. That hot glue problem, where I am burning myself with a 600-degree heat gun, is boring work. Work that is nerve-wracking because glue is inevitably left on the edges, and I have to use either a scissor or my hands to pry apart the stickiness that still stays on the edge. And the real bothersome part about it is that having the microscopic glue doesn't necessarily mean that the page is going to bunch up. It just means it's a greater chance of doing so. Probably the second most annoying thing are the amount of people coming forward, happily to volunteer to be my project manager, with their own ideas of how the pages should be removed out of the binding, what models and machinery they believe I should be using, and then lots and lots of tips on avoiding the problems I've been working incredibly hard and proving are very difficult to avoid. The proposition of a project like this brings out emotions in people. They are ecstatic somebody is finally doing it. They are quick to judge the way it should be done. They're more than happy to mandate how they would do it. And then others, a small percentage thankfully, let me know that this is an utter waste of time. That every month was like the other months in terms of ads and repetition of material. That there's not very much new in each page, and I'm just wasting time. There's actually a third thing that is most difficult to deal with, and that is the pure numbers. My mentioning 3,000 pages for 6 issues, try to understand situations where once I deleted all the pages from an issue and had to rescan, or where I did processing, discovered I'd done it wrong, and then had to go through, do it all again, and re-upload it. In all of these cases, simple maneuvers that for a 8 or 32-page document would just be the usual efforts to refine your work become multi-hour, multi-day processes when your issues are 400, 700, or even 990 pages, as one of them has been. During all this work, one of the editors of Computer Shopper from 1989 to 1992 contacted me, and we began a conversation about what he was doing then, what motivated different kinds of printing, and what it was like working there. And as I figured out, looking through these pages and browsing the strangeness in terms of how much margins there are and how the printing went down, it was chaos. It was pure, unbridled chaos trying to push a 700-page magazine out once a month. That's cooked into the Computer Shopper experience. The prices to put in a simple ad or even a quarter-page or full-page ad meant that somebody with the wherewithal to want to get something across, to make a pitch that may or may not have been backed up with reality, was incredibly strong. You have a fertile breeding ground for people offering the strangest, the most unusual things for others. We see this in the beginning of the magazine with all of these 386 and later 486 ads, and we see it in the back with weird promises of software and hardware that will improve you as a person, be the bargain of the century, and change your relationship with technology forever. These odd nooks and crannies of the computer industry is one of the main reasons why I personally am doing this project. Naturally, when you work on something like this, you are not doing it for just one reason. People are benefiting from the work, and they are each bringing to the table their own expectations of what they want to experience going through it. This is why it's so important to me to get them up to the Internet Archive, even if the pages are not always the prettiest, the edges not quite captured and cropped, and dealing with all the little small imperfections that come from this process. I've already gotten the sufficient feedback from people about things they're discovering or rediscovering, and the boundaries and the platforms and the situations, and how it's a springboard for a whole other range of experimentation, of research, of finding things out. I watched a dozen people try to understand a 3.5-inch disc doubler that claimed that if it put a hole into a 3.5-inch disc, it could double the capacity. Many of us know a 5.25-inch disc definitely has this feature, but a 3.5-inch? That's not a universally understood or known thing. And the discussion that came by afterwards could be illustrated using this lovely scan. The main reason that I'm involved are for those delicious BBS listings all through every issue from the early 1980s into the mid-1990s. I'll tell you, some of the early ones are pretty useless. I don't even know if I'm going to use the information from them or just use the phone numbers and the names and leave it at that. It's really that bad. But after a while, they get their act together. They align with a volunteer group and begin coming up with a process for submitting BBS listings, and they end up having them be pretty good. Although, weirdly, the format changes. Sometimes with the town first, sometimes the BBS name. Sometimes they sort it by area code, or by state, and then area code. They really did make it up as they went along. Related to the scanning project, once they're up on the Internet Archive, I've been asking a small team of volunteers to help transcribe these bulletin board numbers on a shared Google Sheet, so that I can then take these, push them through the custom ingestions for the textfiles.com list of BBSs, and the result has been breathtaking so far. We've ended up with sometimes 50 or 60% of these numbers being brand new, and the majority of them getting new information because they're being pulled from this list. And I expect that number to significantly grow as we add issue after issue in the future. But that's my own wish, my own thing I see, the excitement I get when I scan an issue and discover towards the end that the bulletin board system listings are joining the annals of history. The deepness, the richness, the variety of Computer Shopper pages drives me to enjoy it. And when these little speed bumps, these moments of wrenching paper getting jammed inside of a scanner hit me, it doesn't take too long for the darkness to lift. It is so involved to take on a project like this. I visualized that it was going to be difficult, and I was right, but I was right times 10. The psychological mode in which you are putting things into a machine by hand, loading it slowly so that you can finish an issue, and then knowing you have to do it 200 more times, happens to activate a piece of me that I'm lucky to have. It's a good pairing. My laser-like focus and this incredibly difficult project. I was right. It had to be debinded. In some cases, there are less than 3 or 4 millimeters margin, and in other cases, 0 margin, literally printed up to the edge, pulled out of this glued binding. It was just a fact. These pages needed to be scanned separately. I purchased a massive amount of just right bags, and each issue goes into its own bag, disassembled, but available should somebody else want to do it a different way. This is going to be years of work. I don't know when it's going to end. I don't even want to guess. All I can do is focus, focus, focus. Dream every day of the wondrous rebirth of these analog printed issues into digital form. Reach out with friends and colleagues who are doing similar but smaller projects. And remember, always, that if you choose right, and I really have, every project is beautifully, wonderfully transcendental. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It. Thanks to James Bekoyanu, Mark Pilgrim, Ernie Hershey, Michael Rubin, Dilip Reddy, Sean Kelly, Trixie the Cat, Martin, Symbionts, and Anonymous, along with the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who have been supporting me and helping me get out of debt. I'm really going to try not to talk about the computer shoppers again. Feel free to read the weblog, ascii.textfiles.com. I'm sure I'll discuss in detail some minor point or some other aspect of the project as needed, maybe discuss some detail of some ad I found that really inspires me to do so. But rest assured, no matter what else you hear me talking about on here, somewhere in the background, turned on and waiting for me to get back to it, is a Fujitsu scanner with a pile of sheets next to it.